Welcome to Divisionalysis. I'm Fog. In my last Descent video, we spoke exclusively about weapon damage in the Descent mode. This time we talk about defense, general strategies for talent selection, for room selection, defeating the Nemesis, and more. Let's go. Okay, last video we spent looking at weapon damage. We've covered that. Now we move on to defense. Now this is a much easier category to cover, but it too is broken down into its own categories. You have the base stat being your total armor, and then you have armor replenishment, so replenishing that white bar, bonus armor, adding to it with a blue bar, and then you have protecting all of that with defensive characteristics or defensive talents. Under armor replen, you've got entrenched, so firing from cover and hitting a headshot will replenish your white armor. Preservation, making a kill, will replenish your white armor. Clutch, if you hit a critical shot, you will replenish your armor. And then you have Dr. Home, armor on kill, completely useless. You can buy 10% armor on kill from the NSA vendor. Essentially, for 250 credits, you can purchase yourself an exotic talent. Bonus armor, you have Adrenaline Rush when you're close. Leadership, performing a cover to cover, gives it a massive amount of bonus armor, and it's doubled if you land close to an enemy. So up to 200% bonus armor, very powerful. Protected Reload, you can possibly take this one if you're not taking a non-reload talent like Chatterbox or Bullet Hell. You've got your shield bonus armor ones, and then you've got Bloodsucker, the exotic, which will give you 8% on kill. And then a defensive, you've got Insulated, which I do take, and I do take as a preference because of the number of hazards that you will encounter, and a lot of the time special ammo from bosses and the like could be the reason why you die. So that one I'll tend to stack. It will be one of my last choices, however. Safeguard I'm never taking because I'm never healing. So that's it. It's a very small category, a very small selection of talents, which makes your overall strategy when it comes to this pretty easy. The question is, do you want damage or do you want defense? Now in the last video in regards to defense, what I showed you was that there is, under the weapon damage category, is your red stat. So your red stat is an additive stat, and that can be easily replaced with a number of other talents from that category. And all of these talents will total up to give you a final single damage number. Now in the last video I showed you a strategy where you could take all reds and take that into the Nemesis fight and potentially burn down the Nemesis in under 20 seconds. But at the end of the day, the reds that you add have very little impact. What I didn't show you is that my fastest Nemesis burns have been on builds with 0% weapon damage. And that's just purely because reds have very little impact on your overall damage, and blues have a more powerful effect in the long run. And why is blue so powerful? Well, not only blue is the only place that you can get base armor, it's the only place that you can get that stat, so it makes it better than the red stat for a start, but it's also multiplicative, in that every single time you add to your base armor, every single one of these talents is improved in strength because of that base armor. And not only that, none of them are mutually exclusive. So if you improve your base armor, you are improving the strength of entrenched, and you're also improving the strength of preservation and of clutch and of armor on kill, all of which can proc together, having a multiplicative effect on your defense. Same with bonus armor, Adrenaline Rush, Leadership, Protected Reload, they are all increased based on your base armor level, and the only place to get it is from a blue stats upgrade, which is why I will always take it. And at the very most, I am taking one of the other stats, either utility or red, at a ratio of 10 blues to one of the other. So overall, talents start to refine themselves. You're going to take a selection of pretty much these talents here. You're going to have a strategy around your exotic talents. It's either going to be for fast firing, slow firing weapons, so fast firing and ammo conservation, or slow firing, and you're going to have either increased damage or increased protection, whatever strategy you choose, and that can be defined by RNG. This is me at loop 12 getting my second exotic talent. So I don't know what the ratio is. I thought it might be 1 in every 10 because I'd had a loop 10, loop 11 where I got my second exotic. Obviously loop 1 guaranteed. But here you can see like loop 12 before I got my second. So I don't know what the actual ratio is, but RNG can be a bitch. And here my choices were so crap. I already had bullet hell as my loop 1. So I decided, right, I'm going to test out glass cannon and see what it's like as I move forward. That didn't work out well. I died the very next loop, but that's another story. You're going to select a total weapon damage combination, you're going to select a critical damage combination, and you're going to select a weapon damage combination. These 6 are the 6 defensive talents that I would go with, and then your utilities, these 4 are going to be a stalwart, and then you are going to select either a hybrid approach, or you're going to select some form of weapon handling to offset unhinged, and steady-handed will produce both a weapon handling effect but also an ammo conservation effect. But here are some options that I have used and have been successful with. So this is an ammo conservation and a defensive strategy. I've taken 2 weapon handling talents to offset unhinged. Is going to be the largest weapon damage increase that you can get, topping that off with the occasional red selection. And I'm using vindictive and surgical to proc critical hits, which improves obliterate. Next option, I've gone for an ammo conservation and damage over defense. So same in regards to the last one. Again, taking 2 optimization talents to offset unhinged, but now I've added in close and personal because I'm going to run and gun. Next option is for fast firing weapons. You're now going to use critical hits from agonizing bite to proc extra damage from both critical and strange. You're going to use that as your primary source to get crit chance, and that is also topped up with vindictive. But now I've got also lucky shot and extra amongst these categories, so I'm attempting to essentially triple the size of my magazine, and that means that during half of that magazine I only need to kill 1 enemy to have it topped back up. So that's the conservation strategy on the fast firing. I'm using agonizing bite to proc 2 seconds of 100% critical hits, and that allows me to remove surgical from one of these talents. That is offset by vindictive when it's not active, and that gives me more damage, and I am running and gunning and getting in people's faces. The next option is to go for all damage, but you are losing out on the rate of fire bonus from Chatterbox. So you will be purchasing ammunition at almost every supply case, and in some cases you may in fact run out of ammunition on one of your weapon systems. I haven't reached a level yet where I've been incredibly pressed, especially if you can get lucky shot stacked and steady-handed stacked relatively early on. But there has been times where I've been waiting for that supply room and having to consciously think about how I'm spending my ammunition. But this is certainly the way to get the most damage. It's up to you, your selection. And the final one is one that I haven't taken to very high level, like level 30 plus, but I have taken it into the 20s quite comfortably, and that is a hybrid option. So I've stuck with Plague of the Outcasts, and I've taken Bloodsucker to improve the defenses, which is also procced by skill kills as well. I've done away completely with critical hits, so weapon damage output is reduced. But I'm relying on the improved strength of my skills in order to offset that. And those skills can become incredibly powerful with a combination of destructive tech support spike, and they get reset almost instantaneously, almost 100% of the time, if you can stack skilled quite high. So it's another option if you're bored with running and gunning. But these are just templates. RNG and your playstyle are going to dictate what you decide as being the best for you. But when it comes to the skills that you select, if you're running and gunning, then most people are going to take a Revive Hive. If you've seen this video of mine, the second skill I strongly suggest as being one that's going to divide the enemy's attention, whether that be a decoy, an assault turret, or a striker drone. Decoy is the best at dividing enemy attention. Assault drone is best for distraction and being able to put it deep into enemy territory and get people out of cover and the like. An assault turret has a higher health than the drone, so each with their own advantages. If I'm hybrid building, then I'm taking the striker drone and either the assault turret or potentially even the cluster mines, because the cluster mines will hit multiple enemies and gets reset very, very often, and it staggers all those enemies that it hits as well. Choice is yours, world is your oyster. Those are some general tactics that you've got for talent selection. So let's just talk about some general strategies when it comes to descent. So some general strategies, let's talk about the loops. From loops 1 to 4, I'm generally taking the hardest that there is. And the reason to do that is to gain as much currency as you possibly can. And the reason to have as much currency as you possibly can is to make sure that you're never faced with a talent choice where you don't have a talent slot to put it in. I wanted to be able to purchase as many talent slots as early as I possibly can, and in order to do that, I'm selecting the hardest rooms. They're only a single wave, the enemies are very easy, you should be able to take care of them through loop 4. For loops 4 up until the Nemesis, I'm generally taking the easiest room available. Once I've got more slots than I have for talent selections, the currency starts to lose its value. And I'm only taking those harder rooms if it potentially means that I can reduce my percentage to the Nemesis in just a way that allows me one more loop to potentially get another chance at an exotic before I hit the Nemesis. I've done it with one exotic, there's no issues there, but it's obviously advantageous if I can have multiple exotics going into that fight. Once you've defeated the Nemesis, then I'm taking easy rooms every single time. You'll generally have purchased everything by about loop 10, so there's nothing more to purchase from the vendor at all. And then as far as which rooms I'm going to select from there. So in the first 4 loops, it was always just the hardest loop. I didn't care what talents it was. I've always got multiple selections that I want on my build. Between 4 and Nemesis, and between loops Nemesis through to 16, I'm going to be taking easy rooms, but I will make a selection here or there if it presents that I'm going to get, or I'm going to be able to improve a deficiency in my build at that time. But my general rule is that I'm going to select rooms that have a blue potential talent at the end, but when it comes time to select that option, I am taking either the yellow or the red option every single time. And that's purely on a statistical basis. That's because the number of talents in those pools is considerably larger than what it is in the blue pool. So I'm much less likely to see that talent again for a longer period of time. I'm always going to be able to stack the talents that I want on blue every single time that I come across a room with blue. Because I've got the currency there, I can re-roll if I don't see anything that I like. Once we get to past loop 16, then you're looking at 3 waves of enemies per room, and it can get pretty messy pretty fast. So I'm taking the named boss option every single time, and the reason for that is instead of facing 3 waves of enemies, I get a single wave of enemy, and you'll generally be more than powerful enough by loop 17. You'll generally have 3 exotics by that time. You will be able to take down a single wave very, very quickly. I'm going to continue to take the easiest option available to me as far as room types are concerned, and every single time I get to the supply case I'm going to be purchasing special ammo because I literally have nothing else to spend my money on. Now, just on the subject of purchases, I thought I'd discovered a great secret the other day. It was the first time that I'd ever seen it, and I thought that I'd been given the opportunity to purchase a free life, essentially. I then tested that theory, and don't do it. It is not a free life. It is not a free revive. You die and there is no option to use it. It's obviously a glitch that's a carryover from group play. Once you get to loop 25, things start to ramp up. You will get rogues in one of those rooms probably once per loop. So it makes camping the doors a little more interesting, but if you've built right at loop 25, you should have more than enough damage to be able to take down at least one rogue if they both spawn from exactly the same door right in front of you. And from loop 25, there is only hard options or named bosses. And obviously I'm selecting named bosses every single time because that single loop is just so much easier and you can save a bunch of time. They're actually easier than what the hard rooms are, in my opinion. And that's it. Things ramp up considerably from loop 25 and onwards, especially loop 30 plus. Now, this being the 3rd weekend that Descent has been released, I had my 3rd opportunity to reach level 40, which had been my goal. And I sat down and I was absolutely cruising. Had 0 buy difficulties all the way up to level 30. I'd actually was tracking 2 hours faster than my previous weekend's effort. I was feeling so confident I actually got a little cocky and put myself in a position between 2 doors and thought that I could handle it. Well, this is how it ended. If you like the video, then like it. If you want to see more, subscribe. I will see you in the next one, and next weekend I'll give it another crack. Bye, guys.
Serious trauma detected. Agent down.